Perspective Shift is brought to you by fdailycoaching.com. If you're seeking assistance to help navigate you through a difficult time or feel challenged to reach your full potential, Frank Daly can guide you to a perspective that will allow you to utilize your imagination and experience a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Frank has been working with people for over 20 years as a coach, helping them understand the power they have to transform their lives.
Welcome to Perspective Shift.
How we doing today, guys?
Good.
Doing well.
Good. We are honored to have a special guest here on the show. We've got Mr. Jeff Lobeck with us today. Hey, Jeff.
Hey,
Hi.
Jeff,
How
how's
you
it
guys
going,
doing?
man? Yeah,
Great.
thanks for coming out, man.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you
we
so much.
appreciate
It's
Yeah.
awesome to have you here, seriously. So are you still in Chandler? Is that where you currently live?
Yep. I'm in
Okay,
Chandler.
sweet. So for those tuning in today, Jeff is a special guest. He has quite the resume. So the reason we asked Jeff to come on, so Jeff is a transformational coach. He also works with Tony Robbins. He's a contractor for Tony Robbins, which is very cool. And then he does business consultation. So we figured we'd bring Jeff in because of his unique perspective onto mindset, consciousness, etc. Everything that we dive deep into on this show. So excited to have you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
No,
All right.
absolutely.
So let's start off by getting into like how you got into this work and just have the audience there, and then we'll see where it goes from here.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think something like that's
Yeah,
perfect.
I won't go back to when the,
Yeah, when the big bang.
the beginning, the bang. But grew up in North Dakota. Moved out of there in the early 30s. Moved to Houston, Texas for a couple of years, and then ended up here in Chandler.
Okay.
But how it all started was about 16 years ago. My wife Stephanie and I, we were hot winter vacations in Mexico for a while.
Okay.
Every year, met a couple, really enjoyed spending time with them, became friends with them from the East Coast. And one year in 2007, they gave us a call and said that they couldn't come with us that year.
Okay.
And that upset both my wife Stephanie and I, and it was because Steph and I were in 15 years of marriage. We were just kind of roommates, and we really didn't want to go to Mexico alone. If you can believe that, you know. And so she said to me, she goes, well, what else would you want to do? And I said something that completely changed everything. I said, I'd really like to go to a Tony Robbins event live one time.
And you brought that up, right?
Yep, I brought it up. It up, and she said, yes, I will go with you. We found a live event in March of 2007 in Secaucus in New Jersey, and she goes, I will go with you, and one exception, she goes, if you take me to a Broadway musical.
All right.
Well, you got to remember, I'm from North Dakota.
Yeah.
Not a lot of Broadway musicals there, so I said, yeah, I'll go. It was one of those things where I go, I got to dress up, I got to do all this stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'll do
it
if you'll do it.
I love you, honey.
Yeah.
Taking you to Broadway.
So
Exactly.
we fly out we fly out there in March, and we go to the first day.
Yeah.
We go to the first day and changed my life.
So
Day one.
you got hit on the first day.
Day one.
Yep.
As they said, I drank
Running through
the
your
drank the
veins.
Kool-Aid, and
Yep.
it was good.
Yeah, so
And it was
like,
good.
Like, how many people were at this event back in that? This is like how many years
16
ago?
years
Like
ago?
15, 16 years?
16 years ago, and probably 2,000.
Yeah.
2,000 people, where now they have 12 to 14, 15,000.
But still, 2,000 people in one room, that's a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
It was.
That's a packed
It
crowd.
is a lot, yeah.
that's packed.
And
Yeah.
so, we went, and one of the things that happens the first day is Steph and I didn't know this, but we were going to walk on fire that night on some coals. And we were like...
I did that drunk once.
What'd your wife say? She look at you like, what the hell?
Well,
But
what
she
happened was before Tony did that, he knew you could talk whoever you came with out of it.
Oh,
like,
okay,
hey,
yeah.
I'm not going to do it. You're going to do it. No, I'm not doing it. So
Yeah.
that we could leave, right? So he splits us up. So we had to go find buddies before this even happened. So I had a stranger I was with, and she had somebody else over there. And so we don't see each other for the whole day till the end. And so when we met up with each other, we both had walked on fire.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
Now-
I was one of the last people to walk. I was so scared, and this was me back then. But I remember my partner and I, my buddy or whatever, we'd go from one long line to the next long line,
Just kept
and
moving
we
around.
just kept moving, and we kept looking, and we were like, oh, and we got close, and then what was funny is, there's no coincidences, but there was a life learning lesson for me from the universe. I got to the front of the line and they're asking for more. The person there was like, more coals. So they added more coals right in front of me. And I walked across and I'm like, oh, that's fake, because I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
Really. And so we do that. We go back to the hotel room, and then the next morning, this was like the change for Steph and I.
Yeah.
Is Steph and I were sitting there. I was getting ready in the morning. I was in front of the mirror shaving. Steph was in the shower, and I said, hey, what Broadway musical are we going to?
Yeah.
I thought, well, we learned a lot yesterday. I said, listen, ask good questions. And so I said, hey, what Broadway musical are we going to? And she opened up she had a shower curtain. She opened it up, and with this wet face, she looked me in the mirror, and I looked at her in the mirror, and she goes, "Who gives a fuck?" She goes, "I want to be back in front, because the sooner you got in front of the doors, the better seat you got." Because it was
first
like,
come, first serve, right?
open the door, go running.
Yeah.
I would
remember
run.
seeing those videos, people pouring in.
I would run. She would bring all the snacks and stuff, and I'd get the 2 chairs.
Yeah.
And then that's how it got going. So that's kind of how it all got started. And from there, we just dove. We just jumped in.
All right. So you've been doing, and obviously you say you're contracted for him.
Yeah. And then 16 years later, I'm a contractor for Tony Robbins.
Congrats.
And you're doing the very thing that
assistant fire captain.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I go around the world and help start big ass fires in metropolitan areas to get 10 to 12, 14,000 people to walk across.
Now, how long of a runway of coals did you have to walk across? How far?
It's about 5 strides, so 15 feet or so.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Enough to really do damage if you don't,
Yep. Oh, yeah, definitely. But, the position that I sit in is I'm the shoveler. I'm the one that puts the coals on for Tony's lane.
Right.
So I get to see celebrities. I get to see people that are in his group walk across. So I've seen, some people like, we're supposed to be in state. We're supposed to be standing there like a rock in the river. That's a metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just like, because there's Indian drum music going on, and you got 14,000 people, 10,000 people screaming yes.
Like tribal.
So you just want to get you want to get into it, but we're focused to be present and keep a safe space for them, because it's a safety thing. I mean, I've got
tuck and roll.
I got 2 wheelbarrows full of coals behind me.
100%.
And we got to make sure that everybody's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because fire is dangerous.
Yeah. So that's the position I'm in, and the position that I love, because I've got to be present, but I get to watch people come up, and I get to see their faces. I get to see into their eyes.
Yes.
And you get to see the people that are in state and the people that aren't, and that's why the trainers, the lead-ins that people help, they get them in state to walk across. The people that send them across, they're really good at what they do, because they can see if they're in state or not. They won't send them across until they are.
I was going to say, has anyone ever tried to go through it out of the state of that?
And when you say the state, for those listening, we're talking present.
Being present.
Yeah.
You can get into a state.
Knowing.
Yep, just knowing.
Yeah.
Just knowing. I mean, it gets down to, I know that there's a, you've heard of like the grandmother lifting up the car to save the grandmother.
Absolutely.
Like, and 3 big guys go over afterwards and they can't lift it. It's like it's inside of us, but we just need to get into that correct state. And that's the thing. This is the cool thing. Like Tony, he gets leverage on each person after this is the first day, because that's not the reason you go to this event. The event's life changing, and it happens on the 3rd day. And I'll leave that to anybody. If I'm not going to go into that, people just need to go. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, because you can explain it, but they have to experience it.
Yeah, they have to experience it. So you don't go for the firewalk. What you do is he teaches you. And this is a thing that I teach. It's an inside job.
Yeah.
Everything that you're going to work on, it inside first, and then it shows outside. And so he teaches you how to be able to get in state, and anybody can walk across coals. Yeah. Anybody can.
Yeah.
And so how he teaches that is he teaches you how to physiology move your body in a certain way, in a quick way, to where you can get into state immediately. Mm-hmm. And once you're in state, I use that every single time before I go on to a coaching call.
Okay.
You know, I stand up, I move around a little bit, and then I make my move. And what it does is it just opens up and gets the nervous system ready to go. Yeah. And I'll tell you, you could be, say you have to make a scary telephone call because you know somebody that's going to answer is mad at you or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you can make that move and you can hear the certainty change in your voice. You can get more certain, and whoever has the most certainty wins.
Yeah. And actually every human being does this, but they're not choosing the state.
Yeah.
So if they have to make that call that's making them scared, they get into a state of fear. Which makes everything go to hell in a handbag. So it's a natural thing. It's like with Tony, what you're doing here is teaching people how to actually choose the state in which you want to be in, not become a victim of the state that you're
quote unquote should feel.
Well, conditioned to. So we'll condition. People want to condition as fear because they thought if there's enough fear out there, I can control you through the solvent of the fear. But it's like, no, take it, like you guys, you're teaching that. Okay, how do I then guide it into a state where I'm choosing it? And that's the brilliance. That's what everyone's looking for.
Well, so I want to ask you this, Jeff. So your story is interesting because I remember you mentioned when we were talking off camera, just, all right, you had listened to Tony Robbins tapes in the past, right? And what inside of you made you go, I want to go to Tony Robbins? So you're living this humdrum, very
he couldn't go to
normal,
Mexico. We know
but,
the
story.
story.
Totally consumer-driven, all that type of lifestyle, which, the majority of people in Western culture fall victim to at some point in their life, and you're just living this. Why wouldn't it be let's go on a cruise?
Yeah.
Why Tony Robbins? Like what came over you in that moment to do that?
Let's go back to when you had the cassette tapes. Or
You see what I mean?
Hey, I didn't tell this before, but I'll tell it now.
Yeah.
So I was 22, something like that. I bought my first place.
Okay.
And I'm living in North Dakota. Bought a little condo, 2-bedroom condo, and I back in my partying days.
Yeah.
And so you go if you go back into the late 80s, you could come home after the bars closed at 12:30 with McDonald's or Hardee's or whatever you wanted, and you turn TV on and you had 300 stations back then, but you could always, after about midnight, you could watch Tony Robbins every half hour on the hour. If he would be on one station, and then you could go find him somewhere else on again till like 4 or 5 in the morning.
So he was the originator of late night TV.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's
and
so
so
fun.
I would get, there would be something he would say, and it's something lit up inside me. Like, this guy could really communicate. I think that's one of the greatest skills he has, is to communicate at a lower level where you always get it. He can tell great stories.
Yeah. He spoke truth. That's we recognize truth.
Truth.
That's,
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so,
no matter how asleep we are, but this is what I tell people all the time. When you're talking to people, like, you can share these types of concepts that we talk about, these consciousness stuff with people, and they get it in the moment, and they feel it, and they know it, and it's the bad habits that just pull us back into the same old shit, the same old lifestyle, the same old humdrum, blah, blah, blah. But you're right. You can still see truth and feel it. And you're like, there's something here.
And I felt it. I did. I felt it. And I was connected to it to where I would flip into another station and watch the exact same program again. And so a couple weeks, months and months go by, not always the same old on Friday, Saturday nights, but it was pretty regular.
Yeah.
And then
go out, drink, have a good time, eat some food, wake up, do it again.
And then I came home on a Tuesday, and I had this box in the mail, and I'm like, "What's this?" So I went in the house, I opened it up, and it was cassette tapes from Tony. I didn't remember ordering them.
Oh, you did a trunk
That's
buy.
so funny. Yep. I was gonna say one of those nights. Oh yeah.
Yep. So
What the hell is
it was
it?
one of those nights. So now I have them, and I'm like, "Oh, they were like $300, and that was a lot of money for me back then."
Totally.
And so started listening to him, and I listened to him so much that I knew him verbatim.
Yeah.
And every January 1st, I'd go to cassette 1, and I'm like, listen to it, and he'd go, do these 2 action steps right now, and I'd go do them. And then the next day, he's like, do 4 action steps, and I'd do 3. Mm-hmm. And then by the next week, I was like, oh, I forgot to listen to him.
Yeah.
And so I knew him verbatim, and then that's kind of how it all started. And then we go back to this going to Tony live in March of 2007 is when life started, never be the same again. You know.
Yeah, because you enacted what you've learned.
We did.
Yeah,
we did. We brought it home and we put it into practice, and it was really funny because one of the days.
Who's better at this, you or wife? No, I was kidding.
Yeah, seriously.
We're both really good at certain aspects of it. Yeah, and that's why we're a great team. Yeah, you know, that's why we work together, and it works out really well. I love the ebb and flow.
Yeah. It's cool because in a relationship, you have the other. Well, actually, it'd be very difficult for you to be in a relationship with someone if we did into this at this point. Mm-hmm. It'd be almost impossible.
We're married 31 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, so 15 years. We're getting off track a little bit, but 15 years of being married, roommates. If one of us would have said, you know, I feel like we should get separated or we need to do something different, the other one probably would have said, at that time. At that time. And today, I'm more in love with her today than I ever have been because we're working on the marriage.
Yeah.
We're working on the marriage. I mean, a lot of times, you know, we work with couples, and the first thing that we ask them to do is mentally divorce each other.
Yeah.
We want you to divorce each other and start dating each other again. Because if you start doing the things you did when you were dating, all that stuff comes up. Because if you think about, you know, intimacy, that's very important. It's the only way you can recreate another human being. Yeah. Or there is different ways today, but that's the old way of doing it.
But I love this because so many people are at this point, whether it's 15 years of marriage, like you're saying, where you just feel like roommates or years dating, whatever, and they feel like, oh, I've lost the spark. I have to exit this relationship in order to go find that spark. This isn't my true one. This isn't the person for me. And that's not it.
It's not it.
That's not it. And in fact, that your true one, your soulmate, your everything, you know, could be sitting right in front of you. Yeah. And it's just you've lost your spark. And so that's really powerful.
Yeah. So, you know, everybody thinks the grass is greener on the other side. Yeah. And so you just got to fertilize what you got, you know. Yeah. But yeah, we've been through it. We've been through the darkness. I always tell people, Steph and I have gone through the darkness together, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
But you have to face the darkness. It was like you were just talking about. Some people go, you know what, this isn't it. There's no passion. No, I'm out of here. I'll go find it because it's not this. Mm-hmm. If you can face what's going on, and you got to look at yourself first and go through it. I will say when you go through it, everything on the other side is what you're always at. That's what you've been after forever. The passion, the love, the fulfillment, everything's over there. Here's the cool part. If you go through the darkness, on the other side of it, all the old stories, all the old things that you wish you wouldn't have done, all the things that created the problems in the relationship, they're still there, but the emotions aren't attached to them anymore. Yeah. That's the big thing. Emotions are gone. And so you can talk about them, you can learn from them, but they don't take over your life.
It's another way of looking at hell. Fire is a purifier. So we always look at hell as a negative connotation, but it could also be used to, when you go through the fire, you actually burn off all the old. You do the connection. So that's what, like Winston Churchill, when people thought he was joking, but he says, like, when you're going through hell, keep going. Yeah. Because on the other side, you'll burn all the cords of what happened in the past. So it's even beyond the metaphor of hell. Like, go through it. But when you come out the other side, you're purified.
Well, that's deep too, because like on any level, these same people, you know, okay, this relationship isn't working, you know, 10 years, 15 years, whatever, they go to that new relationship. Well, what happens now? 2 years in, 3 years in, same feelings. Oh shit, what's going on? You know, it's not working anymore. I thought this was the new one, and it's everything we're talking about is from here, starting within us.
So the question is, like we asked, like, what is it about the new relationship that's exciting? It's unknown.
Yeah.
So we're really meant to live. Like when you stepped out of the first day, you're looking like, we're going to be walking to Kohl's at 5 o'clock? What?
Yep.
Talk about unknown.
Like, holy cow, we're going to get some slippers on or something. But yeah, like it was unknown, but yet you were... This unknown is what changed your life in that moment once you went through. And obviously it changed your wife by her ripping the curtain open and says, we don't need a Broadway play.
Yeah.
That's a distraction right now.
Yep.
What we need to do is dive deeper into ourselves. And that's really what life is. It's diving deep. We don't need distractions anymore.
No more surface. I mean, I love my family and stuff, but I'm like the the uncle that likes to play with the kids. I'm like the kid magnet.
Hell yeah.
And when we get together for like family reunions and stuff, I would rather hang out with the kids because I don't want to talk about politics and the gas prices and stuff. I'd rather have those deep conversations.
It'd be a hell of a life.
I love that you say that, Jeff, because I've been researching you before you jumped on, and one of the things that struck me that you said that I thought was so awesome was you said you haven't watched news in like 16 years.
Nope.
Yeah, and I'm on year 4, so I want you to know, like, that feels great.
Well, Donald Trump said it best. It's fake news.
It literally, truly, yeah.
I'm not here to agree with anything other than with Donald Trump. Not to disagree either, but he literally nailed it.
He definitely helped open that up, for people to see. And then it was funny, I was telling Frank I was just watching that movie. I don't know if anybody listening has heard it, but it's what was that? The one with Morgan Freeman and. What's his name? Jim Carrey. He plays God or whatever.
God Almighty.
Yeah, Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty, right?
Yeah.
So in there, the beginning of it, they're showing he works for a news station, right? And they're trying to capture these live news moments, and they keep having to stop, and they keep having to, tell the people what to say so they don't look stupid or so that they look good. And it's so funny because they're blatantly right in our face showing us what's happening with our news. Everything on our news station is scripted. It's stopped. It's told to move forward, etc. And we play like it's natural in its real life. Everything we are fed in our media is a specific narrative, a story, laid out, and it's all very scripted. And so when you were talking about how you haven't watched news, that was the single best decision I ever made in my life, was stop watching the news. And consuming this idea that one of my favorite quotes is Walt Disney, I heard there's going to be a recession. I've decided not to participate. Like, how beautiful is that, especially right now as we're in this weird, are we in a recession, are we not? Part of me looks at this and goes, man, with all this new way of consuming media and everything, we've got all these like podcasts, we've got these YouTube channels, etc. It's harder for this narrative of we're in a recession to take hold. And so right now we're in this, are we in one or are we not? And it's like, well, it's kind of both, because half the people are like, screw that, we're not. We're going out, we're doing our thing. And this whole group that previously was kind of controlling exactly what everyone thought, they don't have that strong of hold anymore. And so people are taking their power back. They're saying, wait a second, there's other sources to get information from. I don't have to believe what's coming from this station. And so what type of change has that had on your personal life and like your family's life, your kids' life, like taking out the news?
Wow, 16 years ago. I guess as I think about that, because that's a great question, it was just one of those things that just became, we're habitual creatures. So the habit was my parents watched the news. That's what you would listen to before you go to bed. And maybe a little Jay Leno, whatever was after that.
My parents did.
But we'd listen to watch the news to catch up on. And I guess
to be aware of what's going on.
The best way I can put it is that we have some family members that come to the house, and what they'll do is they like to watch the news. And if they come like once a year, that's the last time I watch the news. And nothing's changed in like 365 days.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing. I mean,
they're still arguing over the same stuff.
They changed the names.
Yeah,
it changed the names.
There you go.
That's all that happened.
They changed the names.
I was at a seminar years ago, and a young lady got up and she goes, I'm going to read the top 10 headlines from the newspaper, and I want you to think about what newspaper it could be. She was getting us off track, but she read all 10 of them. They were all like crazy. And she said, what newspaper, and blah, all this stuff. And it came to realize what she was doing, it was from 10 different newspapers, but the big thing was it was from 10 different decades. Didn't matter. Didn't matter if it's the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good little technique or thing to show people. Wow, I would have never guessed that.
When you actually, a lot of times we study history through the narrative of negative aspects. So even like Winston Churchill, another quote of his, history is one damn thing after another.
Yeah.
But when you turn that narrative into it's one amazing thing after another, you actually create a different history, a different timeline. And that's what we're here to do. This is obviously what Jeff's here to do as well, is especially with your family, is change that timeline and switch it to a different track, if you will. Because it's true. Like what's hard right now for people to to push off, because like if you do something and talk about it, like there have been people that talk about this stuff before, but you would look at them like, are they actually living it? But now we can actually go into people's lives and like, well, what are they doing? They're doing what they talk about. So like, well, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you because you don't do it. And it's not the doing, it's the way you look at it, the way you believe in it, and then the doing is the natural byproduct. But the doing, like someone says, oh, I did this, I did that to become rich. And I'm like, if I do that, I didn't become rich. Why? Well, it wasn't the doing. It was a state in which you did the doing. And so you're here to teach people how to get into that state rather than this state. Because no one wants to be miserable. I haven't met anyone that wants to be miserable. It looks that way sometimes, but they don't want to be miserable. Mm-hmm. How do I get out of it? And then you tell them, well, what? I'm like, well, but what? I used to be miserable. Mm-hmm. I'm no longer miserable, but you can't take my word for it. Mm-hmm. You got to figure this shit out for yourself. But you know there's an answer out there. If you didn't, and misery would be fun.
and we all do know this. This is why you were still clicking that TV remote, back in the 90s when, you got home after the bar. There is this inherent knowing inside of us that wants to break out.
Yeah.
It's like dying to.
And Tony knew to do it at 1 o'clock in the morning.
But
this is where the alcohol's wearing off. They're going to be more lucid.
Right?
That's what he does in seminars too. He'll go 10, 12, 14 hours. He wants your consciousness to fall asleep so you can talk to the sub.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. How long? Like what's a day? What's a day like at a seminar, Tony Robbins?
Yeah. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and it starts off where. And I will tell you, I just talked about this. For us, like time is an emotion. When you're doing something that you love to do, time disappears, and when you're doing something you don't like to do, it drags on.
It shows up.
And you go to one of those seminars, and he makes it like a rock concert feel for you, but you're learning and you don't know you're learning.
Yeah.
And so he uses music and lights and all that stuff too, but it's not a rah-rah session. It's because he's learned how the brain can learn and how the body can help it. And he knows how to move it around. So he goes by, we call it Tony time.
Yeah.
When you get into a seminar, it's Tony time. And if he's teaching something and he feels like the crowd doesn't get it, he'll keep going until he feels like they got it.
Yeah.
And so,
that's cool.
He'll do a lot of interventions too. And an intervention, somebody stands up and does an intervention with him. It could last 10 minutes or it could last 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
And he doesn't know. So, that's one of those things with the Tony time. But he can feel it.
Yeah.
And so I love that, because how long does it take, for him to help somebody? As long as it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. And imagine now too, like you said, it started out like 2,000 people when you went. It probably started out with a couple hundred when he first started doing it, but
absolutely.
Now he's like, thousands of people. So there's already this energy already in there. It's already primed, and he's just molding it into that place. But that's what we all here do when we get in front of somebody.
Absolutely.
Is we want to take that energy and harness it and use it, direct it in the direction in which they want to go. You don't want to just see it blow up and go to waste. Like, well, let's take the energy and direct it in a direction, because there's fulfillment there. But if you just blow it up, that's the sprint. Mm-hmm. But if you actually direct it, that's the marathon.
And you make a great point, because the sprint part of it, that's what people want. People want like what we what I've worked really hard for.
Yeah.
But
in a pill.
It's in a pill. They want it in a pill. It's like, give me the pill and let me take it. And it's like, no. It took you years or decades to create these habits. We got to create new ones, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
And are you finding out, like, as you're doing this now 16 years, that you get the accolades, you see all the stuff in the outside world, which it's there to show us if it's working. That's why the money comes, it's letting you know it's working.
Yeah.
It's not like that's why we do it. But you also find out it's really about diving into the process. So now you want to do the marathon. You no longer want the sprint. You don't want it. Like, hey,
you're enjoying the journey.
Yeah, and to get on the freeway, I have to accelerate my car to like almost 5,000 RPMs. But I know at some point it's going to level out and drop down to just below 2,000. That's the only sustainable way I can live. But people often think that when I do that, you slow down. I'm like, no, I'm moving at 80 miles an hour, 2,000 RPMs.
Mm-hmm.
But from 0 to 60, I hit it up to about 5. So people want that exhilaration. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. That's anxiety.
That takes a lot of energy.
It does. Yeah, it does. You need it. If you're not continuously doing this, you need it.
Yeah. You want to fall in love with the process, because if you set a goal, an outcome, a target, whatever word you want to use for the future, what it is that's just a direction. So it's the direction of where you want to go. So you start to become conscious and watch you go along the way. You want to fall in love with the process. So Tony talks about 2 things. These are like things that I just gotten right away. It didn't take long, because it's the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. Mm-hmm. So the science of achievement is, if you want to create a great podcast, go find somebody already is doing it and find out what they did. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Just do that, right? So that's the science of achievement. But he says, I've worked with so many people that are millionaires and billionaires that have figured that out, and it's easy for them. It's easy for them to go make a couple $1 million. That's just easy. It's the art of fulfillment, of loving the journey along the way, is where people get stuck. That's the one that you really want to work on.
Yeah, he talks about that all the time, because he knows billionaires that are miserable.
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, how could a billionaire be miserable? I'm like, well, if you understand how this works, you can understand that. Mm-hmm. Do you know, like, bring it into like podcasts, like you brought that up, because me and Mike have been doing ours for about 2 years now. And I remember listening to Joe Rogan, who's kind of holds that.
He's literally the king of podcasts.
Yeah.
He's got the largest in the world.
But he had a guest on one time in the science field, and a buddy of his, the doctor that was on, is like highly intelligent. He talks about, and I forgot what the subject they were talking about, but talks about this stuff. And he says, yeah, he tried to get the information out there. He started a podcast, and Joe Rogan said, what happened? He goes, well, he had it for about a year, and only this amount of people will listen to it. He goes, dude, I've been doing mine for 10 years before anyone knew who I was. Mm-hmm. He's like, tell him to go back on. The world needs this information. Don't give up. And it struck me. I'm like, yeah, like Joe Rogan had been doing it for about 10 years before people knew who Joe Rogan was.
I didn't know
and then everybody thinks it's an overnight success.
Yeah. He's been grinding, and he's still grinding. Yeah. He just now he's grinding at a different level. Yeah. But he's still grinding. He does 4 podcasts a week.
Yeah.
You know? And now he has people lining up. But you can tell he loves it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
he does love that.
And that's how, when I look at, like, hey, I didn't know I wanted to do podcasting a couple of years ago, but then I'm like, okay, who am I going to look towards? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to look to Tim. You know, obviously, we talk about different things, but it's the passion behind it.
Yeah,
it's the fulfillment.
And we talked about this a little bit, and we'll jump in. I've got Steph and I have 2 boys, Alex and Zach, A to Z, 27, 21. So if you can imagine, take 16 years off of their ages, and they're like 11 and 5 or something like that when we went to Tony, and so we started changing things around. But we told them from the learnings, and this was something that like was hours and hours of us working on ourselves that we came up with this. We didn't just start telling them at 5 and 11. It was probably 8 and 13, 14. We said, what we want for you as parents is we want you to figure out what you love, and not what we would love for you. Don't take us out of the equation. What would you love? And then create a life and a career around that as an adult, so you never work a day in your life. Because I said, I don't want my kids to say Monday sucks, hump day, and thank God it's Friday, and then drink all weekend.
Yeah.
That there's way more to life than that.
Yeah.
And that was a profound thing for us.
But it's weird, because you turn on any television show, you put on any movie, you go to a movie, you turn on any radio station, whatever. We're taught that that's normal. We're taught that that's the world we live in. Yeah. And that's what's the shame, is everybody just goes, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And that's the world I remember growing up in. And I was just like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
It is, you just party on the weekend, except there is so much more out there than partying on the weekends and, working, and then buying whatever holiday it is.
Get high on life.
Yes.
Yeah. But
or like Wim Hof, high on your own supply. Like I do breathing every morning, like you do. And Frank, that's Wim Hof's saying. Get high on your own supply. It's true. You think those drugs and alcohol are great? Let me show you some breath work where you will be blown away.
Yep.
But the cool thing about this is, like, I guarantee it, whether your children intellectually know or not, the second you and your wife came back from Tony Robbins, like, they're probably like, what the hell's up with mom and dad?
Different people.
So even if you didn't intellectually explain it to 3 years later, they got it that day. Like something, because actually biologically, we're all connected to this, we talk about the, in quantum physics, they just had the...
Unified field theory?
Yeah, the unified field theory. The quantum physicist just won the Nobel Peace Prize last year, which Einstein was working on. He thought there was some, he thought there was something missing. It turned out there wasn't. It was just a way of looking at it.
Yep.
But why I bring it up is when you and your wife were at the Tony Robbins event, walking through the coals, your DNA changed in your children.
100%.
You literally sent the Bluetooth information to them.
Yep.
And they're young, so they're like, how do I process this?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we can do but I can also do it to a friend. We could be surrogates to each other. That's what prayer really is. Prayer isn't like, God, help this person. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, I want to see this person in the light. And when you go to a Tony Robbins event, that's what Tony Robbins is doing for everyone and everyone doing for him. Because he's getting jazzed up.
Oh, absolutely.
He wouldn't be doing this in front of nobody. He'd just be walking around. But you got like thousands of people out there. It's like, wow, he gets jazzed up for that too. Absolutely. And it's one big unified field of energy. And it's all one common goal, even though every individual is going to use it differently. They're going to leave here and start this business or do this or teach their kid. But that one field of energy is one contained unified field. Yeah. There is no splitting. It's an illusion that we're separated.
Yeah.
And when we connect into that, we then send messages. We don't even intellectually go. Because your kids are probably thinking, like, I'm going to ask Dad a question. What are you going to ask him? Like, I already know the answer. I already know what he's going to say. Because if you're going to go to your dad and complain, it's like, Dad's not going to let you complain. So, you know?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. So I know for me on my journey, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera and stuff, like what I wanted to learn was I wanted to learn how to win at life. I wanted to know how to like find success, etc. So I started with like books like Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, all these different, concepts just to kind of get a better sense of understanding of, what's going on. Well, as I, began to understand these concepts on an analytical thinking mind level, then I began to feel these concepts. And then this led from like this, what I thought were like these desires of, I want to make a lot of money, I want to be successful, etc. And it turned into like this path of learning to like love myself, etc. But I guess what I'm saying and getting at is, what I thought was like this self-motivating, rah-rah win, do well for myself type of thing. What it was really like turning into was a much deeper knowing about myself. Mm-hmm. And I began to understand, like, I began to dive more into like consciousness and what consciousness is and what is this experience that we call reality, and what are these what is this illusion, this stage that we're on. Did you find yourself like diving deeper into those type of concepts after quote unquote like scratching the surface level right out the gate, like at your first Tony?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, on your journey in consciousness.
Yeah, my path was, when we went to Tony, in the back of my mind, I didn't say it to anybody, but I was just going there to get rich.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's going to teach me the like ABC, and I'm going to get all the XYZs, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And realized that my life was all messed up. I mean, I didn't, today I can tell you, 15 years ago, I was just a roommate to my wife.
Yeah.
Steph and I were just roommates. But we didn't know it back then.
Yeah,
we really didn't.
It was
know
normal.
It was. The people we hung out with, that was norm.
Yep.
And so we didn't really realize that. So when we got into it, Tony said, "You need to start questioning. You got to start questioning yourself, and you got to start taking responsibility because this is your life." And I was like, "Whoa!" So it's scary, but there's so much freedom in it when you take the responsibility. Going, everything up until this moment right now is all been because of me.
Yeah.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
And so I came home and I started to question stuff. One of the first things I questioned was when I was 12 years old, I went for a sports physical.
Okay.
And blood pressure was like 180 over 120. And I didn't know. All of a sudden, I'm 12 years old and they're throwing me on blood pressure pills. So I'm taking an old man's white pill every day from 12 until I was 42. I went to Tony.
Holy shit.
And he said, question everything. So I started, I'm going to question why I'm taking blood pressure pills. So I go to my doctor. He was a cool guy. And he goes, I said to him, I asked you a question. I said, what's going to take for me to get off my blood pressure pills? And he laughed in my face. And then he looked at me, he goes, I'm not laughing at you. He goes, here's the reason I'm laughing. He goes, typically, I'm usually putting people on blood pressure pills at 42. And he says, and this is his language. He goes, I've been a quack for 26 and a half years. And he goes, this is the first time anybody's ever asked me to get off of a pill.
Yeah.
And I was taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa. So what we did is cut them in half, cut the pill in half. I started, doing a lot better exercise and less alcohol, that stuff. Mm-hmm. And in 18 months, I got off blood pressure pills and never been on them since. Yeah. So that was the first thing.
Congrats.
And the other one, it has to do with like religion. Yeah. So Steph and I grew up Catholic, and I started to question. You're not supposed to question things, and that's one of those that you don't question. And I did. I started to question it, and I said it just wasn't serving me anymore. At one time, it really did. And so I went searching, and I listened to somebody talk, and I said, I asked a question. I said, how come there's so many religions out there? And they said, because there's all different levels of spirituality. And you can wear out one, and then it's time for you to move on. And I'm like, whoa, that feels good. So I ended up going in a different direction. But I got into a direction where they were talking about, one of the languages they talked about in the church was many paths, one God. I'm like, that feels really good.
Yeah.
And then they started talking about consciousness. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means, but it sounds good, and I want to know more about it.
Yep.
So I started taking classes, and I really worked on myself. Yeah. I mean, I think if you boiled it down to everything, that was my first 18 months. Was like I put my nose down and I just went to work on myself internally, spiritually, and that's where the foundation was laid for where I'm at today. Yeah, it really is. So I spent a lot of time, diving deep, and
I love hearing you talk about that. Was 2018 and 19 for me.
Was it?
Was that?
Okay.
Was exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
Where I, asleep to any of this type of stuff, just humdrumming through life, trying to figure things out, and then all of a sudden it was like slap me in the face. I started, I stopped I need to, hunker down and understand what this is, and then I kept going deeper and deeper, and it felt better and better.
Yeah. We were at a Unity church, and sitting there, and the minister says, this was in January. We had started going like in November periodically. And the first time we went, Steph and I walked out and go, oh my God, this feels like home. Yeah. So we were going back.
Was this Michael Beckwith?
No, it was...
we actually covered a bunch of people like that Joseph Smith and stuff like that. Emmett Fox, yeah. Okay. That were they were the founders of Unity Church.
Fillmore's,
out
of Kansas.
Kansas.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, because I think we did him.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We covered him on it, but yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
Very cool. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to church, and the minister says, hey, we're going to start a class on Wednesday. It's called Metaphysics 1. And I'm like, I had no idea what that meant, but I whispered to Steph, I said, I think I'm going to do that class. She goes, you're going to do a class? And I'm like, yeah. And the reason that was so funny, not funny, is I grew up with a couple forms of dyslexia and a memory challenge because of the two forms. And I did not know what I was labeled with, quote unquote, labeled with, until I was like a junior in high school, and they gave me a test and it took like 6 weeks to come back, and they're like, yeah, you got two forms of dyslexia. So they started to teach me different. So I went through, really, I like second grade, so I got to take it twice. Mm-hmm. And so I went through that, and then I started to learn. So when I walked out of school, I wasn't going to open another book.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Why would I open a book if you can't read, you can't remember, you can't spell, all that stuff? That's why I love technology. Today I can talk into my phone and it tells me how to spell stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when I told her I was going to go take this class, she was like, "You're going to?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel like I want to." When I went to that was like the seas parting. Yeah. I remember the word consciousness because we were in a class, and I was one of those Not anymore, but I was in the class and I was being really quiet the first 4 or 5 weeks. We got to a point where they were talking about consciousness, and I was sitting between the two facilitators for some reason. There's like 12 people sitting around, and I'm sitting there, and they started talking about consciousness, and I said underneath my breath, but one of them heard me, and I go, "Oh, I get that," and I hadn't mentioned it, so can you share? Because they wanted me. So I shared, and this is how simple it was for me. This is how, I guess, naive and where I was at that time, but it makes a lot of sense. I said, "Oh, I get this conscious. It's like being consciously aware of where you're at all the time." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "If you're always conscious, you can never lose your keys."
Yeah.
Because when you're conscious and you set them down to go get, because you forgot your water, you're going to know where they're at. And I'm like, and they're like, yeah.
Full awareness.
And that's just that was like the spark,
Yeah.
you know. But I still remember it like it was yesterday.
See, that's so cool.
Do you still attend Unity Church?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Which one do you go to?
Unity of Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah, because the one that we used to go to was on Kyrene and West Chandler Boulevard. But Kira Bear ended up moving back to Houston, Texas, and starting another church over there.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, it was close to here.
Yeah.
There's one in Chandler for a while. And
I've never been. I'm gonna have to go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we've covered a couple of authors that were in the Unity Church. Because it's different, even though they use the Bible, it's a different way of looking at it completely.
Oh, they actually go into the metaphysical and consciousness.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because me and Mike were both raised Catholic as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say we grew up with the Catholic guilt. I was taught by priests. I went to a Jesuit high school, and the whole thing.
Yeah, I never bought into the guilt. I just put my head down.
See, I bought into the guilt.
Yeah.
I thought it was a real thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, hardcore.
I still work on that.
So I'll tell a quick story. I just like to bring it up, but I remember when I started to understand and learn these concepts, and like when consciousness was like a light bulb in my head. My relationship with Frank was like really blossoming. Like he was the one really helping me understand these concepts. Well, all of a sudden I'm driving down the freeway one day, coming home from one of its meditations, and I'm like going over everything in my head, and it's just like it hits me like a wall. And for those listening who understand what I'm saying, they'll get it. But like it was in that moment that I realized I was God, and I was like, oh my God. And then like I started getting these weird Catholic guilt thing where I was like, I can't talk to Frank about this. This is like sacrilegious. I can't say this shit. Like what is it? It took me 2 weeks to go up to this man and say to him, Frank, I've been like going on in my head, but like, hey, I think I'm God. And I was so nervous I was going to react, because at that time I thought he was like kind of religious, and I thought I was going to offend him and like all this stuff, because we had like talked about this. And it was in that moment when he was like, all right, buddy, now we're going to really start talking, like you finally get it, and it was that changed my life. And coming from such a hardcore Catholic background, like you would, that's blasphemy, to say something like that,
Yeah, not just say it, thinking it.
Yeah, to think. It was just like, I was like burning in the depths of hell just by having that thought. And it was so funny because like I remember seeing like Frank just smile, like crack smile, and then like all this relief poured over me. Yeah. But it was like, dude, like not only are you in good company, like finally you're here. Now you're sitting at the table. Now you get what's going on.
Do you know what did me in? The fact that you said the word thinking about it. I'll never forget, I was in catechism. I knew in Catholic school, we went to catechism every Tuesday from like 2nd grade to 8th. I remember sitting in there, and we had this nun, Sister Ann, I think her name was, sitting there, and she's saying, not only does God know everything you're doing, and I'm like, yeah, I could, I get that. He goes, he also knows what you're thinking. I'm like, fuck me. I'm like, what?
Right.
And then later on that day, I'm like, well, the hell with it. I was done with this fear, because like you go into a shed and like, well, God can't see through the roof, so I can do whatever. But if he knows what I'm thinking, I am completely screwed.
Yeah.
And I realized, you know what? I'm done with the guilt. I'm done with it. So I just skated out. But I'll never forget that. That's stuck in my head. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That's what I'm thinking. Now I can't stop using the F word.
But that's the thing. Where we're taught that there's like this something outside of us that's always constantly watching, etc. It's just, and then you start to dive into this, and you learn where these things come from and how they started and all that.
Then you realize it's you.
Yes. And this was all a really, really crazy play to teach you to remember what you are.
Yeah. Well, we have funny stories about it.
Oh yeah. Well, one. I'm not going to call it the Bible, but there's a book that I listen to and I read I don't read a lot of books. There's some authors that I can read.
Yeah.
Some that are just over the top, and I just listen to them audible.
Yeah.
But this book has been with me for 6-7 years, and I've worn one book out where the glue is worn off, and I've got another one, and it's Conversations with God, book 1.
Nice.
I haven't gone. I don't even want to go. I don't even want to go to any of the other books because
It's a great book.
It is still a book where every single day I learn something new about me.
Yeah.
Not about anything but me, and I'm like, oh, and then it's kind of funny. You highlight something, and then you go back and you listen to it again and go, okay, why did I highlight that and I didn't highlight this? Because that's more important.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I'm a new person.
Yeah.
I've changed every time I listen to it. I change, and that like
isn't that awesome?
light bulbs going off everywhere.
Yeah.
I
love that
sometimes
feeling.
like I had a client where he's like, oh my gosh, I introduced him to a couple of books by Michael Singer.
Yeah.
And The
Untethered Soul. We love him.
Yeah. And he's like, I've gotten so many aha moments and so many insights coming into me. I said, okay, unplug the popcorn popper and digest some of it.
Yeah.
Take time and digest, because it's if it opened up and it was like so new, because I love being around people that it just like it's the first time
Yeah,
they
when it
get
pops.
it. You want to just like
That
you
is
want
the
to just
best.
want to hang out with them.
Yep.
We talked about out there. It's like, I grew up to be seen and not heard. Grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Be seen and not heard. And then I can't wait to become a parent, because then I can tell my kids to do everything right.
Yeah.
Some of my greatest teachers are my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that. It's like
Absolutely.
there's teachers everywhere. I know that this is one thing I learned from one of Tony's mentors, Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn talked about the Bible. He said if you have a religion, he says, all I can tell you is study it and practice it. But he says in the Bible, he says in his opinion, the Bible was a bunch of warning and example stories. There's examples of what to do, warnings of, warnings and examples.
Parables.
And I say to a lot of people, I said, I use that language a lot in my coaching. I talk about warnings and examples, and I said, you know what? A person that's a warning in the morning can be an example in the afternoon. It's not just they're a warning all the way through. It's just how it is. But if you look at a human being like that, kind of mirroring you, it's like, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
It's like
100%.
the more powerful a question you ask, the more powerful the answer that'll come back, because it's inside of us.
Yeah. And that's where the unified or the non-duality comes into. When you're teaching, you're learning at the same time. There's no separation. And I think a lot of people that start to learn something, talk about it, teach it. Why? Because you're learning. So it's almost like, okay, I read a book, I enacted something, well, go enact it. How do I do it? Explain to another human being. And in the interim, that's why I love to talk. In the interim of me explaining it, I have these aha moments all the time. Yeah. So that's why I talk about it a lot. It's like I am not an expert more than anyone else. I know very little, but what I do know is I get these aha moments every day.
Yep.
Nice. And I get moments every day too but when I slip into those, it's like, okay, I laugh. I'm like, got me again.
Seen you before.
Yeah.
I know this.
Nice try.
Yep.
Nice try.
Yeah.
Jeff, let me ask you this about when you're working with Tony stuff. So when I've seen Tony, because my first time seeing Tony, I'm a millennial, etc. I told this on the story before, but it came from the movie Saving Silverman, and he was a cameo.
It was
Saving Silverman. Or no, it's not Saving Silverman. It's
it was Shallow Hal.
Yeah, Shallow Hal. Thank you. Sorry, not Saving Silverman.
Banana Hands.
Yes, Banana. So that was the first time I ever saw this guy, and of course, like you're saying, he had infomercials and stuff like that. But I mean, that's how I knew he was. But the first time I ever saw him speak was there, and so then I started listening to him and stuff, and I always looked at him as this motivational type of speaker, and that was it. And I just labeled him as that, and I judged him as that, etc. And then when Frank and I, started down this path, and he was one of the gentlemen we wanted to cover on the show, etc. When I began to deep dive into him, I realized, just how much Tony understands consciousness and dives deep into this, and even more so nowadays with like the health professionals and the different people. He's trying to show people, the mirroring science and consciousness, and what's going on. Have you noticed that in your 16 years journey so far with Tony, him become more consciousness focused?
Yeah. And in events, he'll.
Less motivated, more consciousness?
Oh, yeah. Like
that's how I took it.
Like a lot of times with him, people ask him, and he says, I'm the gap guy. I'm like, you want to be here, and you're here, and I help you close the gap, right? But when I was, it was 42 when I went to Tony, met a lot of people through there. Got a friend of mine that used to live in California, now she lives in town here. And she... If I remember her story right, she was like 15, 16. She couldn't take it at home, so she moved out. She was kind of homeless. And at 19, somebody gave her a ticket to Tony. And her and I are exactly the same age. So she's telling me the story, and I'm like, oh, my God. Mm-hmm. I wish I would have heard about Tony when I was 19. She goes, no, you don't. She goes, Tony was not the same person he is today. Back in that day, she goes, he was very anal. It was like, this is how it is, and you're going to do this every day. You're going to eat fruit from the time you get up until noon. He had all these different rules. He had rules,
yep.
And this is how you're going to do it. But she goes, that's what I needed.
Trading one habit for another.
Yep.
Yeah, it worked out perfect.
Yep. And she goes, that's what she needed. And like knowing who I am, that would turn me off. So I would have been like, if I went to at 19, I'm like, motivation, it's personal growth, that sucks, I'll never go. I'm at 42, it was perfect for me.
Yeah, so you found the teacher at the right time.
I love that journey.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking about, I remember like back in the day when I got the tapes too, I'm sitting at home and I was following them. And one of the things is, and I still do this, but I do it in a different way, is journaling. So he had you write in a journal every day. And I was like 4 or 5 months in. And I remember like writing in the journal. It's Tuesday, January 14th. I'm writing in my journal. I don't know what else to say. I got nothing left. But I wrote my journal. So there you go, Tony.
Yeah, check. I did it. I did something.
And I was at this point where I'm like, what am I doing?
But that's what we're taught. The outside world teaches we have to do something outside of us.
Yeah, but what I learned later on is like my journaling is writing stories. My journaling is writing, and I don't do it every single day, but by doing that, what Tony did, it actually gave me this habit. So then but what it was doing, it was actually it was creating more pressure in my life, so I had to back off. Yeah. And he's already teaching those subtleties, but I must have missed that. And I kept doing it, and I'm like, what's going on here? But then I realized, okay, it's not that I have to give up journaling. I have to look at it differently because I'm in a different place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the beginning, I had a lot of good things to talk about, but by 4 months in, and like not how much, things change in a very tapered, gradual way. I'm trying to write something exciting. I'm like, my life was good, but it wasn't exciting from the first moment I learned this stuff to then. That's that first sprint out the door. Then everything else is like this nice tapering off and the leveling up. Mm-hmm. And I realized, I gotta stop doing this. It's gonna drive me nuts.
I think it's cool that you got to see him refine over the 16 years.
And now with where he's at today,
because I can tell by the stuff he talks about and covers today.
Oh yeah,
it's very consciousness
focused.
It
has a lot to do with his wife Sage.
Okay.
Sage brought that into him.
Oh really?
Sage brought that. Like, you got to live too. I mean, he tells the story all the time. I love listening to him tell stories, but he tells a story about they knew each other for maybe years, and he used to, talk to her when he was dating, going, "Hey, what about her?" And finally, they realized they'd give it a try, and they went out because she was a phlebotomist, so she was doing. He would do like Life Mastery, an event called Life Mastery, where they would take blood out and be able to look at your blood, and then go through a cleanse and see it again.
Oh wow!
And so she was there for that. And so they went out on this date, and he's like, "Oh my God, she this is what she does for a living. This is gonna be awesome." So they go out for dinner, and he's like looking, and she's ordering a salad, and she's ordering this and that, and it was like, he's like, "Oh, this is awesome." And at the end of the meal, she goes, "I'll have a hot fudge sundae," and he goes, "What are you doing?" And she looks at him, she goes, "I'm living."
Yeah.
So that's where he came up with like this zig and zag. Yeah. So there's a zig and zag with everything in life, So that's where that's where the spirituality started coming in.
Yeah.
Because Sage, she's phenomenal. If you're
that's
ever
his wife?
Yes, yeah, that's his wife. So Sage and Tony, if you're ever in the presence with them, you will never not understand, or try to explain this the best I can. They are so present. They're so present with you, and there could be thousands of people in the room, but if they're talking to you, you feel like you're the only person there, and that's something that they have to work on. That's special.
Yeah.
So the spirituality part of it, I know that, I don't know their spiritual, essence or what they practice, but one of the things that I do know, that we went to one of the events after UPW where we walked on fire, and it was called Date with Destiny, which is, if anybody's listening, if you have a heartbeat, you got to go to that. That's something you have to go to. Where that's what we do. Our oldest, his graduation present from college was Date with Destiny, and that's what's going to be our younger son. He graduates in a couple of weeks from NAU. But when
I'm a lumberjack.
Yeah. Okay. So we went to.
That's it, man. Scott's
lumberjack.
Yeah. We went to Tony, or to Date with Destiny. During the event, he said, we're gonna do a oneness blessing, and this was something that came from India, and it's trying to raise consciousness in the world.
Yeah.
And so he had a handful, probably 50 people that had gone through the process in India, and it was kind of like a hands-on thing. So there's like 3,000 people in there, and he's turned on some, really nice chanting music, and got to go through that. And I had an experience and a half. I was like, that was where the spirituality started coming through. So yeah, you're right. That's what he's kind of gone. He's gone, and he.
I just wanted to ask you, because I felt that way, but you working with him, I was like, you're going to know this.
You've seen a journey of 16 years. Yeah.
Exactly.
Process, yeah.
You've witnessed it.
But I guess if he hadn't, he'd be a hack.
Yeah. You're right. Because we all know this is the only truth that's going to bring you back to yourself.
Yeah, but even then, it's like you'll be with him another 16 years, and you're going to see it grow there, and you're going to see yourself grow. You're going to see your kids grow. There's no I'm here. I'm like, no, you're heading in a direction, but that direction is infinite in its movement.
And forever changes.
It always has to be moving, because you're living or dying.
Yeah.
There's no neutral. That's a lie.
Yeah.
You go outside and look at all the trees putting new leaves on.
Yeah.
Who's still living.
Yeah, there's no maintaining. People like maintain, like that's a word that should take out of English language. I'm maintaining. Like there's no such thing.
That is something we all try to do, though.
Well,
we try to maintain. I want to maintain all right, I'm happy. I got just enough money come in. I'm okay with the kids and the wife. I just want to maintain this for a little bit. That's where a lot of people always try to be.
Well, that's where the real stuck happens.
Yeah.
Because you need to get into an uncomfortable situation to change.
Yeah.
For you to change, you have to look at it where, you can create the pain in your life to change.
Yeah.
You don't have to go looking for it from now. Certainly, you don't have to wait till your bank account gets to zero before you're like, okay, time to wake up. Because there's a thermostat in our heads.
Yeah.
We got this thermostat, and say at 72 it's perfect, and say it's your financial situation, and your bank is like your bank account's like right at $7,200 in savings. You're like, perfect. And all of a sudden you start doing really well, and you're doing really well, and all of a sudden you get to the point where you're like at 10 grand. You're like, ooh, that's a little uncomfortable, because you got this mindset of like rich people are bad. So now you'll sabotage. You'll turn the air conditioner on, and you'll bring it down, and vice versa. And you get down to 5,000, and then you'll turn it back up. So you got this happy medium. It's in the medium, in that middle, where we can get stagnant. And stagnant water starts to stink. Right?
Well, you start telling your story, because if you get to the place like you're 7,200 and then you get to 10 grand, you tell the story when you get 10 grand. And if you do that enough times, you're going to want to quit the game, because the altitude change is too hectic. But what you're saying is turn it up to about 9,000.
Well, the thing is once you realize you have a thermostat, now you can change it to anywhere you want.
Yeah, so now if you're making 10, you have 10, then turn it up to 10 and make that your baseline, and that keeps going, because in physics, there is no such thing as stagnation. Everything is moving. Even we may have relatively, as Einstein put it well, relative to this desk, I'm not moving.
Yeah.
But sorry. But outside of relevance, everything is moving. But what direction are we moving in? Choose it.
Who you hang out with is who you become.
Yeah.
Right? And you guys can tell by what you guys are doing here. Who you hang out with is who you become, and it pushes you more.
Jeff.
And it pushes. I'm glad we lived close together.
Exactly.
Close together. this really was a huge turning point for me. And it was at a business mastery event that Tony was putting on. We have a group of people that own a company in Texas, North Dakota area. And we work with them, and they decided to do business mastery. So they did it virtual in Vegas and had my wife Steph and I come up and facilitate it. And while we were there, we get to go through 5 days of this content with some of the best people in the world of Tony's caliber that teach their expertise. And what hit me the most, great information, but this thing right here, like, said, hey, I'm playing too small. So Tony does a exercise on the third night of 5 days. Okay. And after you do the exercise, he goes around and throws some microphones around and has people share their stuff. And one of the people that was sharing reminded him of, and I'm sure this was set up. I know it was set up. He reminded him of a lady that had gone through the same exercise years before that, and her only thing that she wanted as a goal for that year was she had a friend, a relative, or somebody she knew that their child of like a daughter of 9 years old was taken for Underground Railroad. For sex trafficking.
Yeah, sex trafficking.
Wow. And so while she said that, there was another gentleman in the group. He was a computer genius from Simi Valley. He quit his job and he moved to a country with a couple other guys, and they created a software to find these cells that had these kids on the computer, but not on the streets. They'd find them and then they would save these kids. Oh my God. So Tony heard about this and brought this guy on. And what he more or less did is he said that, when they first started this years ago, it would cost about $3,500 per girl or person to find one of these kids. And they were able to create the software and then kind of get it to the point where they could save a child for $500. Wow. Oh my God. So what he did is he says, we're going to do something here, and whoever would like to contribute, whatever they contribute, I'll match up to $250,000. And in 47 minutes, they raised $1.3 million.
Holy shit.
That's going to save like 2,400 girls and boys too. Yeah. But we drove away from there that night. It was the last thing that happened that night, and I looked at Steph. I said, "We're playing way too small."
Yeah.
Playing way too small.
Yeah, we're expanding, because that's it. We are the universe. Wow. But we set a thermostat way too low.
Exactly.
Because we're used to it. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have to head into the unknown. All right, so knowing Tony Robbins, obviously doing this, you would highly suggest going to an actual physical event rather than trying to do it online?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll see, I've got 16 years in. Yeah. My peer group is around the Tony environment. Yeah. That's where some of my best friends from Canada to other countries are. And so I learned, here's what I will say. I went to Tony Robbins, we talked about this 16, 17 years ago. As a participant, mind-blowing. And then 6 months later, I went and volunteered for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I learned just as much volunteering as I did sitting in the seats. Yeah. Because everything he's teaching, these people have been doing it for like their 16 years, and they're using his tools on how to like run an event, run these events. So all of a sudden, we go back to who you hang out with is who you become. I started hanging out with people that like cheered me on. How do we say that? We hang around with people that are here to tap us, pat us on the back and kick us in the ass when we need it in a loving way. Yeah. And you got to be hanging out with those type of people. So when it comes to the virtual, Steph and I participated in a UPW virtual, and because we can, comparison is the thief of all joy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, but we compared our live version to going virtual. No comparison.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no comparison. But
we're talking energy through the roof.
The content that you get is it's the same.
And this kind of goes right back to what you were saying, like with the example of the woman your age but found it at a different time. Maybe that's just what you need in that moment when you're just, you know what I mean? Maybe that virtual event, and that leads you to the next step or whatever.
Yeah. Or some people actually do very well with virtual. It's almost like, but
I'm like that. I want to be there.
Yeah, a lot. Some people do, but some people get maybe a little more. They'll take the information differently. They're fine with it.
Oh yeah. The thing that I would say, live or virtual,
you're gonna learn.
You want to play full out.
Yeah.
You want to set up your day or your 4 days where you're not going to be interrupted. You don't no work. Take work off. If you can get babysitters, get babysitters, or if the kids are old enough, have them in it too, so you can start talking the same language.
Yeah.
But you want to play full out. And that's what he talks about. It's all about the physiology. It's all about, like, when I ask you a question, you say it back to me, because that gets into your state. So I can say anything I want, but as soon as you say it, now it's truth.
Yeah.
And that's why he wants you interacting. That's where you learn the fastest.
So what's the longest, or how long are these events? How many days? And I know he has different ones, right?
Yeah. UPW is a 4-day event.
Okay.
And the days are, I don't know, 9, 10 in the morning until, let's see, the last one, the firewalk got done about 1 in the morning.
Yeah,
wow.
So
it's Tony time.
Yeah.
And then there's Date with Destiny. That's a 6-day event.
Gotcha.
There's a whole bunch of it. He has one that's called Mastery, and it's like a life, wealth, Date with Destiny events, and it's kind of a package deal. Mm-hmm. But if you look at UPW and you look at Date with Destiny, UPW is kindergarten, and Date with Destiny is graduate school.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Where you go really deep into your values.
So depending where you are, you would choose which one to go to, because
if you can afford to go to both, and go to UPW first and then Date with Destiny.
All right, Date with Destiny.
Yeah, because then you'll have the language, and you'll have he talks about some stuff that's pretty deep there. A lot of his stuff I use in my program, and there's other teachers that I've learned along the way too. Where I've kind of created my own stuff, right?
That's the way you have to do it.
And that's the way you have to do it. That's what Tony did.
Yeah, you got to make it your own.
Is your program, like, how do you kind of handle it? Is it more one-on-one focused type of stuff, or is this stuff where, like, you have like a 4 or 5 day type of series?
Oh, so
how do you and do you work with Steph on this, or is this primarily you?
No, Steph is part of it. Okay. So we have three different programs. We have one-on-ones.
Okay.
And most of those are on Zoom from all over the country, and a couple people that'll come into town, and I get together with them. And I do have a couple people that I have worked with one-on-one here. We have one that's called the F&A group, which is the Finish and Apply group, and that's a group program where we get together once a week, and we go as long as it takes. And what that's all about, and that started because of me. I was sitting there journaling one day, and I was looking across the room, and I looked at all these booklets of all the seminars we had been to, and I'm like, I have more information here than I'll ever need. Why do I keep going to stuff? Mm-hmm. What is going on here? How come I'm not applying? I said, I know all this stuff, but how come I'm not applying it? You can know it, but not apply it. So I started to go, okay, I need to apply it, and I need to apply it until I finish it. So take one thing at a time, apply what you need to do, and then finish it. And then when you're done, you can go to something else. So it was like one thing at a time. So in the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, he talks about, you can only do one thing at a time. That's what created the Keller Williams to be such a big as they are.
I love Keller. I'm in real estate. That's my profession.
Okay.
Yep.
So Keller Williams, well, Gary has a question that says, what is the one thing such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary?
Yeah.
Well, boy, that just better question, better answer. And so mine was all about, then in one of the chapters in there, it talks about priority. So the word priority came into the picture in like the 1500s. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until 1960, 1950 that they went from plural or singular to plural and started talking about priorities. And then from there, we've got everything from, we can do 8 things at the same time. It's not how the brain works. Multitasking. That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
But that's your brain just can't do that.
No.
So if you take this and apply it,
I wish my wife knew that.
Yeah.
She's trying to get me to do 50 things in one day.
That's right. That's right.
No, it works.
So in a nutshell, what we do is we come together. We've created a thing called the DC formula, where what we use is science, we use mindset, we use accountability, and we bring them all together. And what happens is you can't hide from it. Yeah. The list we talk about the levels of accountability. It's the accountability to the group, accountability to your coach, accountability to yourself. And on the sheet of paper they have to print out every week that they get to fill in. They get to fill in the list of stuff that they're going to do daily and the stuff they're going to do weekly. Because it's our big thing is win your week, win your life.
Yeah.
So it's all about 1 week at a time. And if you can get 52 weeks in a row to be good weeks, the weeks you want, you look up and go, oh my God, my year was
different
great.
Person.
Absolutely, totally different. Yeah. So what we'll do is they get to fill it in, but at the bottom of it, they have to sign and date it.
Yeah.
So it's like buying a car. You don't get the keys to the car till you sign.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have to take responsibility, and then you get to come next week to tell the group if you did it or you didn't do it. And there's the truth will set you free. So there's no fibbing, no lying, those types of things, and that's been game changer. So that's our F&A group.
I love that.
And then the last one is Healthy Once and For All. Healthy Once and For All is kind of the same concept, but we create the DCs, the daily changers, or the direction changers for them. And so they have a list of things they have to do. We come back every week. And what's really cool about this whole thing, because of the science and the mindset that gets jumbled together, you come together. This is really cool. You come together. You say, I'm going to do all these things, and I promise I'll do them. You come the next week, and we ask you, and they're like, yeah, my numbers, if they had 28 tasks to do, and they're like 20 out of 28. First, we celebrate the 20 they did. We're like, awesome. You just did 20 actions that you have never done before, or you did last week, but you did them this week, and let's talk about the 8. Let's talk about the 8 you didn't. So here's what happens. This is where the story you tell is the truth that you know. Yeah. The story will be revealed, and it'll come out of the water, and it'll surface, and you'll be able to see it. And once you see it, and we see it together, all of a sudden, you guys talked about this before, it's all about patterns.
Yeah.
If you did it here, you do it over here. Mm-hmm. And once you're aware of the pattern, now you can change it.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I learn just as much as they do.
Yeah.
Because their pattern will show them like, oh shit, look in the mirror.
Well, on a deeper level too, you and I both know, there is no other.
No, there's not.
Everything you're experiencing, you're seeing a reflection for a very specific reason, and that's why this crazy rabbit hole of experience is so cool. Mm-hmm. Is that? And I know what you mean. Like, you're like, oh my God, like, of course this was a client or whatever, and ding, ding, ding.
And have
and
you
it's
noticed,
awesome.
Yeah, and have you noticed, because I noticed this too, when you start to do these processes, what I know is I don't think, I respond.
Yeah.
You have to think to tell a story, and there are actually neurologists have found this out, that your brain, the average brain consumes about 25% of your caloric intake, the glucose, it needs it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's weird, because if you think about the brain, how much the brain weigh, how much mass does it take over the entire body? You're talking low percentage, like 3%, if that. But why is it consuming 25% caloric intake? It's thinking. We weren't designed to think. We were designed to respond. And there's moments when we need to think.
Of course.
But if you're thinking of a story, that's what makes you tired. But when you're doing a process and there's no story, there's no thinking, like, oh, there's a roadblock. Well, I don't need to think. Just go this way, go that way. Just do it. Mm-hmm. Make a choice. And when we do these processes, there's no thinking. There's just response. Something comes up, we'll go over it, go around it. And all of a sudden, but then when people start to think, well, and all of a sudden they get tired.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the story comes in.
And they actually convince themselves they're tired because of the process. I'm like, no, you're tired because of the story, avoiding the process. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to add, just let's go down one level deeper. Mm-hmm. This is an analogy that came to me a couple months ago, and I've shared a lot. So it's in the moments of a decision that your destiny is shaped. So it's the decisions that you're making. so many people are scared to make a decision because they don't believe in themselves, and it's all about self-worth and self-love. To me, once you have that, you can do whatever. Yeah. So if you don't have that, and it's scary to make a decision, you need to make a decision. Say it, and we'll make it an easy one. Yes or a no. You need to say yes to this or no to this. Here's where we waste a lot of our energy. You heard the analogy of like being on the fence.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence. I don't know which way to go. I believe that people that are on the fence, they're on a wobbly fence, and they're standing on it, and they're trying to keep their balance.
Yeah.
And that's where they waste all their energy. So they won't make the decision. They're so tired, I need to go take a nap.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so tired, I don't even want to think about that right now. It's like you hear that a lot from like people are like, I just don't want to think right now. I just want to zone out. I'm like, you just got done spending 8 hours on Netflix, isn't that enough, right? But if you can imagine like wobbling and balancing on this fence, and you're like, oh, if you just go, I'm making the decision, and you go no, and you go no, and you're like, oh, that was the wrong decision. Now I'm going to say yes. So you learn from here and you go over here. Yeah. But it's that fence. It's like not making that decision.
That's a great way.
Yeah, because like you said, you waste all the energy trying to maintain balance on that fence. Rather, if you just jumped on either side, and it's like, oh, that wasn't the right side. Well, just jump over to the other side.
Yep, that's
less
it.
energy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and no one's ever no one's ever been annihilated by a bad decision. Because if they were, we wouldn't be able to talk about it right now. That's the truth.
See, and that's where the weird conditioning of school comes into play, etc. We're taught that you can't get the wrong answer. Oh, the wrong answer is this. Again, we learned this shit growing up. There's one right answer. I'm the teacher. I'm going to tell you the right answer. You're an authority figure telling you this is all the conditioning we got to break.
This is I haven't thought about this for years. Okay, so I was I think we already talked about the 2 forms of dyslexia. So school wasn't that. School. My 3 minutes in between classes were my favorite. My social. That's where I created the social skills. But going to school wasn't fun. So I'm at a 10th or 20th class reunion, and I meet a couple of people that I went to school with. We met before we went into the reunion. We were in the bar having a drink, and thought of the 3 guys. 2 of them were science teachers, high school science teachers. So we were talking about science, and they're like, oh my God, science is changing so fast now that we don't even really get books for it anymore because we can't keep up with the print because one book's not good enough anymore. So all the stuff that we learned like 5 years ago isn't right. It's not right today. So I'm choking around. I'm saying, oh, so for the F or D I got on my science test like 30 years ago, it's right now, right?
Yeah.
I should have got an A on it.
Seriously.
That's how I look at it.
That's so funny. But that's the truth. I mean, shit, when I was growing up, Pluto was a planet. Now it's not a planet. Like all these little things, you're right.
Wouldn't that be cool? Like a kid's like, I got an F, but in 10 years it's going to be an A.
That's right.
It's just patience.
Yeah, patience.
I'm going to hang on to this paper. I'll bring it back in 10 years.
Yeah, I told you I was right.
Oh my gosh, I seriously think that is so awesome.
Yeah. But also too, like, so you were told as a young child that you weren't, you had these issues.
Yeah.
And when we're young, we believe them. But also too, like, that oddly formed your life too. Of course. Because I had a very close similar situation with me. And I remember, teachers told me this, and I knew they were wrong, but I didn't have the intellectual bandwidth to explain it to them. But to some level, I bought into it and went along. It just turned out I was freaking lazy. That's really what it was. I was lazy, and I tell that story.
It's because of this, Mom. That's why I didn't get this grade.
I woke up one day because I told the story a couple of times, but I had this guidance counselor named Mr. Schneider. The dude was like on his last year. He was a Vietnam vet. And this is back in like 80 or whatever. Like it was in junior high school. And junior high school for me ended up in ninth grade. So you're a freshman in junior high school. So everyone had to go down there to exit the school. So I go down there, and he's sitting there. He's got my whole transcript in front of him, and he's not even looking at me. He's smoking a cigarette, And I'm like, why am I even here? And he's like, so what do you want to do with your life? And I like, what? I'm like, I didn't know I was going to be asked this question. I'm like, well, how old are you, 14?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know, paramedic. And he looked at me. He's like, you might want to think a little bit lower. Oh. And my respect for my elders, I didn't say, go F yourself. But I said, how about a guidance counselor?
Nice.
the best burn.
But no, but I tell you, that dude changed my life because he was the only one that wasn't going to let me get away with it.
Yeah.
My other teachers were kind and nice, and they passed me.
Yeah.
This guy held me. I got pissed, and I said, I'm never going to let anyone talk to me ever again. So that, without him even knowing, he changed my life in the intellectual world.
Wow.
So I started reading that year, and it took me a while to catch up, but I realized I was lazy.
Yeah.
And everyone else, because I was a nice kid, everyone let me get away with it.
Wow.
He's like smoking a cigarette. Listen, kids, it's just going to get you nowhere. And I'm like,
That's exactly what happened.
That's funny. Well, when I said I had to take second grade twice, my first time I took second grade, by the time Christmas break came, I went in. This is how it used to be. I would sit in on a parent-teacher conference. My mom and dad were there, and this was not a conference. This was a meeting for my parents to tell them I wasn't going to be able to. Even with another semester of school, I wasn't going to make it through second grade. I was going to have to take it over again already.
Yeah.
And while I'm sitting there trying not to listen, the teacher told my mom and dad he's a little retarded and he's stupid.
You're like, hello, I'm in the room.
No, and I'm in the room. I'm in the room. So, I hear this, so I'm like, okay, there's my label or whatever, and I don't find out until I'm in 11th grade that I have these challenges, right? So I get out of school and I don't go to college, and I go right into the workforce, and I'm working, and I had a job in town, and it's a smaller town, so everybody knew what was going on. Well, the teachers that were my special ed teachers, okay, they asked me to come back and speak. They asked me to come back and speak to the kids because they're like, oh, you're doing wonderful. I think I was making like $22,000 back in 1985. And she said, can you come back and talk to these kids? And I'm like, sure. So I came in, and I'm like, how do you talk to freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors that are in the same group that I was in?
Yeah.
And I thought about it the night before, and I said, I'm going to do something bold. So I got into the class. The 4 teachers were back there. 3 of them I had before, 1 was new. And I started talking, and I said, can I ask the teachers to leave the room for a little bit? And the teachers were like, and I'm like, it'll be fine. Yeah. I said, I'll come get you when you're ready. So they went into the hallway. And so it was just us, me and the kids. I already kind of changed their state a little bit by saying that. So what I did is I went from standing, and I sat in a chair that I was like level with those guys. Or no, you know what I did? I took a teacher's desk, and I sat on the desk.
Oh, okay,
I sat on the desk with my feet dangling.
Yeah,
like where you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
And I sat there, and I looked at them, and I said, hey, you guys, I said, we'll get the teachers back here in a second, but I got to ask you one question. And I says, the school still suck as much as it did when I was there? And they're like, yeah. And I had them connected. So I told them a story. I said, okay, a couple hundred years ago, parents are farming. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff that's from sun up to sundown. Kids are a pain in the butt. Mom has to work. Dad has to work. They don't know what to do with the kids, so they create these schools. So they bring these intelligent parents together, and they're like, okay, how do we create this school? And they're like, okay, we got 4 or 5 different ways to teach them, and let's teach them these first 2 ways, and the other 3 ways we won't teach them. And I said, if they would have taught the 4th and 5th level, or changes, different ways of changing, you'd be getting A's, and the guys with A and B's would be getting D's and F's.
Yep.
I said, you don't have a learning problem, you have a learning difference. You learn differently. So I said, you learn how you figure out how you learn, and just follow that. Don't worry about what the school teaches. Yeah, they only teach
that
one
is
way.
so awesome. You gave him a history lesson.
Yeah.
God, I love that.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? There's I forgot his name.
Because that's how it happened. That is what. That's exactly what happened.
There was a Harvard professor who did a study on this and the ways of learning. There's 8 ways of learning, and he categorizes that way. You can sub-categorize them, but the system only teaches it 2 of them. So this is why, all human beings come in with these certain attributes. So they think everyone should mold into these 2 ways of learning. What I found very funny, here's a professor, a Harvard professor writing this paper, but no one's taking it to review. Like, they're not using it for its purpose. It's like almost when they do they did a sleep thing on children, like on teenagers. They said, okay, they get the second ladder end of their sleep is what they hit the REM. Okay, now that we know that, but they still make the kids come at 6:30 in the morning to school. Like that. Like, why did you take that? Like, why did you even study this? Because the kids coming in they're drunk pretty much when they're coming to school.
Yep.
But we're very slow to change in society, but that's why individually we change.
Well, one of the things I like to call it and say is we've reached this point now where so it started with a certain type of intent, but now it's literally the blind leading the blind. It's not people who are trying to do this out of a malicious way.
No.
They were taught incorrectly, and they've just lived their life that way in this weird little, three-dimensional bubble that we're told is normal in reality.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to share that with good intent, like, hey, I'm trying to help these people manage their way through this created reality, that was created. With no ill intent, like, you know what I mean? And so we really are like the blind leading the blind right now, is really what's going on. And we don't have enough, like, people who, like, have woken up to this, and sharing that information. But we see that now changing,
Yeah, and you nailed it. So when you went into the classroom, you got these kids' attention by actually putting your energy out there to where they were. So it's not so much what they teach, actually. It's the attitude in which they have when they teach it. Because everyone here knows a great teacher they had. Mm-hmm. And you probably did better in that class than you ever did.
Yep.
And it's because they spoke to you.
That's true.
They stepped out of it. But if people are just teaching on this almost like they told, like, how Tony Robbins first started, like, you got to do this, you got to do this,
from a pedestal, talking down, etc.
Not so much, but if you don't, it's the act, the system.
Okay.
Not how you feel about the system. Once I change how I feel, I'll find a system that's going to work beautifully. And actually, I might switch systems throughout my lifetime. I might have the same, but it's how I feel about it. So when you put the feeling, the emotion first, the system works beautifully. Yeah. But if you have no emotion behind it, the system is just arduous and laboric and everything else.
Yeah. Well, you talk about favorite teachers.
Yeah.
As soon as you say it, it pops into my head. Well, I was a senior in high school. I had a teacher by the name of Mr. Batterberry, with Sean Batterberry, and
that's a great name, Batterberry.
Cool guy. Well, we're 17, 18 years old. He's like 22. He's right out of high school, right out of college, and it's his first job. And he was different. He was happy. He was bubbly, and he was like just wanted us to learn. So it was government. It was government class, and he said, life's way too hard. He goes, I'm going to give you exactly what's going to be on the test. I'm going to give it to you exactly, word for word, that's going to be on the test. The day before, we're going to get into groups of 1 and 2. Going to be one team 2, and then you guys are going to go against each other, and we're going to read the question. Well, I'm like writing down all the, we're not supposed to. I'm writing all down, like what's number 1, number 2, number 3. So I practiced that. I got an A in the class. Yeah, I got it because he wanted to do it. But this is the cool part. His energy, his enthusiasm. He would walk into the class every day, and all the teachers are supposed to close their doors to the hallway. Mm-hmm. He would close it, and then he would open it, and then he would go. Good afternoon, class. And we would yell as loud as we could, good afternoon, Mr. Batterberry. So every teacher could hear it. Yeah. And he'd close the door with a big smile on his face. And he would go sit on the table, and he'd go, so what's going on? Let's talk about current affairs, because that was what he was teaching, right? Mm-hmm. So we talked. I will tell you, my wife Stephanie had him 5 years later. He was still the same person. And here's what he told every student. And he was expanding it out to the universe, and which we didn't know at the time. He told every single person, I'll be a millionaire before I'm 40.
He said that?
He told every class, I'll be a millionaire before I'm 40. He told it all the time. So he was like 45. I don't know how old I was, but I was flying back to North Dakota for Steph's grandpa's funeral. And I happened to be on a small little plane with him and his 3 kids. So we started to chat. Mm-hmm. And I said, Mr. Batterberry, I said, I had to ask you. I said, did you become a millionaire before you're 40? And he's like, nope, 42.
Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
Yep. Now,
I was going to say, he got there.
If you think about other teachers, the mindset around some teachers, whew.
Well, that's why most kids hate school, because it's not what they're teaching, it's how they act. So if he was like, okay, this person is the epitome of success, I don't want anything to do with it. Because if they're teaching, we assume they're successful. Mm-hmm. And if their attitude is kind of like your teacher, that's what I want to emulate. That's what I want to act. But if the teacher's like,
Yep.
Put your books out.
Yep.
I'm like, if this is success, you can keep it. I don't want it. And
That's a warnings and examples.
Yeah, especially if you're a if there's people pleasers out there, they'll do that. But most of us aren't people pleasers. We don't want to please people. We want to interact with people. Yeah. We want to elevate with people. We don't want to just please people. That just gets old.
Yep. I did that long enough.
Yeah.
I think we all did. I mean, that's kind of part of it's what we're taught. Again, you got to act a certain way in order for people to like you. There's all these weird thoughts that, whether it's our parents, whether it's movies, whether it's television, whether it's friends, family, teachers, all that stuff, we're constantly trying to, just fit into this outside illusionary world, and we're like, ugh. And when this clicks, you start loving yourself, and you start to see all this love around you. You start believing in yourself. All these opportunities are around you.
Yeah.
It's almost too easy and too simple and too good to be true that when you're doing it, you're like, this can't be this easy.
Yep, yeah. But it is.
It is.
That's
what this show's about. It's showing people this from every freaking angle.
When you start questioning, it's almost like that guilt that comes up.
Yeah.
I can't do that. You actually go back to the thermostat level in which you started.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool hearing your story, Jeff, and seeing how you break through to all these different people, and even like what you've experienced in your life. And I was listening to this one story you were talking about on air with someone, and you made a comment about how like your kids, I think it was like your son who was like 18 or something, but he like left a note for you and your wife, and it just said, "I love you," like on the in your bathroom or in your room or something. Yeah. Like the impact that you've had on your children. How many 18-year-olds are telling their parents that they love them or leaving them a note? Like,
what means they want a new car?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
What's really funny is, and thank you for that, because we take that for granted, because we still have that going on.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things what we'd always do is like leave little notes around the place for everybody. One of the things that we have created is a thing called Daily Sparks, and it's sending text messages out to people that you love, just saying something that you love, honor, or respect in them. And I did it to Alex and Zach and Steph. I learned about it. Let's say 6 years ago, and I started right away. But I sent them a text message. I talked to them, face to face, and I said, I'm going to start sending you text messages in the morning, something about these 3 subjects or what I feel about you. But I said, I'm not asking for anything in return, nothing. I just want to let you know. And so I started that, and I will tell you, at the beginning, I'm like, how am I going to think of something I appreciate in them? The little whatever you're looking for, you will find. You got the reticular activating system. As soon as the brain starts looking for it, you'll start finding. You make a list of stuff, and you just go boom. And I will tell you, I did it for, I bet you, 4 years straight, and then I kind of slacked off the habit thing. I slacked off on it a little bit, and then I'm always like asking the kids, like if we're one-on-one, I'll ask them some deeper questions. And our youngest Zach, he's always making fun of me. He's like, "Dad, does everything have to be a learning lesson?" And to me, it does, right?
It does. Well, that's all this whole thing is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does, son.
Absolutely.
You'll get it.
So we're driving down the road, and I said, "Hey, Zach," I said, "how can we make our relationship even better?"
By stop asking me questions, Dad.
Yeah, seriously, that's probably what he said.
And he sat for a second, and he goes, "You could start sending me those daily text messages again."
Wow.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So he says, "I look forward to them." And I'm like, because we never, I didn't want to talk about them because that was not the exercise.
Yeah.
I just started sending them, but he started looking for them in the mornings, and then he brought that back.
just schooled you.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, Dad, here.
But it shows you, like, people don't, like, what I really struck, I spoke to you for like 10, 15 minutes on the phone, and I talked to Terrence about you. But when you text me yesterday, say, "Hey, we're coming tomorrow. What do you want to drink?" Yeah. And I'm like, it's like we might have a bunch of people. I'm like, no one's ever wanted something to drink.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
We usually provide it for them. Yeah. And I'm like, this is cool. And I'm like, I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I call Mike up. I'm like, what do you want to drink?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So and then he walked in with gifts. I haven't opened it yet, but I'm like, that is a skill that I admire.
It is.
That is something, because you're thinking of us beyond the point of, let's just get on the show and talk.
That's it. Giving without any expectation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Zero.
And that's it.
And that was one of the things that I will tell you. We're going to go back into this just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I had done some EFT tapping.
Okay.
And then I also worked with the same lady. We did some hypnotherapy.
Yeah, love it.
And so she did some coaching with me before we went into some therapy. Ended up I've been real good friends with her, Michelle Lee. Okay. And while we were doing this, she goes, tell me, and she asked me some questions. And we got back into some like younger years.
Yeah.
And we got back into the dyslexia thing. And as I shared that with her, she gave me her perspective on it. And she said, because I guess I have to share this to make it and have it make sense. So while I'm growing up, I get into junior high and high school, and it's tough. I mean, it's like tough for me. So I got to build a skill called rapport. I got to build rapport, which is so natural for me. It's unbelievable. I thought just everybody had it, and until I knew met some people that don't. And I built this skill. I sharpened the saw for this thing because hate to admit it on air, but I needed to build rapport with the people around me that I sat beside so I could cheat off their tests. And they let me. Yeah. And they would let me.
That's a good business program.
Yeah,
no,
it is. Seriously.
Yeah.
But the thing is because of a lack of learning skills of how they were teaching, I needed to build something around that to survive.
Exactly.
It's all survival.
I get exactly what you're saying.
And then the rapport was a gift that came back to me. So I don't have that rapport skill, and I probably I'm not where I'm at today because I don't have that skill if I don't have dyslexia. So I say thank you.
Yeah,
I say thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great insight, man.
Because what I've learned is whenever I talk to somebody, I never, like, I would talk to somebody and they'll say something and you could tell whatever level they are. I never judge them because when I grew up like you, I was left back in first grade. And what I've learned to do is keep quiet, because if I'm quiet, no one's going to know if I'm stupid.
Yeah.
And I would listen, and I learned you cannot judge somebody. And then when people would say something about somebody, I'm like, well, you don't really know them. I'm like, but I knew never to say anything negative based on that type of stuff, because I would be talking to myself without even knowing what I was doing. I created this skill because I was told I was not smart.
Yeah.
And I just kept my mouth shut. I'm like, well, if I'm quiet, no one's going to know. If I open my mouth, now I open my mouth, I realize, this guy's not smart.
I never said a word in like grade school. I'd walk in and I was the quietest person. I put my head down. I didn't want to keep eye contact.
Yeah, because you were intelligent enough to know that.
The most embarrassing thing that still, when I say it, it kind of gets me going, is the teacher calling my name to go up to the chalkboard, the green chalkboard with the white chalk, to have to spell something in front of my peers and listening to them laugh at me.
Yeah.
Oof, it was horrifying.
Literally the worst.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
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 But like we were talking about off camera, we chose every single experience that we wanted to come in here with.
Yep.
We chose our parents. We knew we were going to have those types of challenges because we wanted to, let me see it from this angle. Let me see it from this perspective. This is what I want to grow from. This is what I want to learn. And when we begin to look at life that way, oh my God, it's no longer this torturous, this scary, shitty thing. It becomes beautiful, and it becomes something like aha, and that is like, that's when life starts.
That's when you say thank you.
Yeah, and actually you don't want to go back and
feel
change
this
it.
peace. You actually, it's like it falls over you.
Because I think like this podcast, and even when I'm confronted with people and they're going through challenges, and I'm like, this challenge is a gift. I just let you know, just keep going through it and it'll work out, and you'll see how it works out. Being young is very difficult because this, like I talked to my son about this. He's 20.
Yeah.
We, like you and I, when we grew up, our parents didn't know where we were unless we were home. Like my son, and I'm sure your children, they're really very well aware. If I want, I could track him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does that make
Very
you
easily.
feel? How does that make you feel? Like, does it feel intrusive? He goes, well, Dad, I don't really know any different. So, but I'm like, does it prevent you from wanting to do something silly or whatever? And he goes, like what? And then I realized my son's more mature than I am. It's like,
Evolution, man. It's a real thing.
He's like, Dad, why would I do that? I'm like, I used to do it.
Yeah.
But,
Dad, that's a lesson for you.
Yeah. He's
exactly what it is.
So, yeah, and I just remember that. But, yeah, when I look back, I'm like, oh, I wish I was treated differently, and I realized, no, I don't. I can't conceive the life I have right now. I'm not doing it. But I'll just let people know, I'm like, don't try to change your circumstances. Try to change the way you look at them, because that's, if someone comes in and tries to change the circumstance, you're just gonna be a victim your whole life.
Yeah.
But overcome it. Yeah, it's difficult. But know this, when you get through it, like we said earlier, go through hell. That's when you become, you burn all the excess stuff off. You actually invites it in. That's the beautiful thing about life. Yeah. It's gonna be challenging, but that's what we're here for.
I mean, to your listeners, think about in the last 3-4 minutes we were talking. You just shared you got to take second or first grade once or twice.
Twice, yeah.
And I had to take second grade twice. And look where we sit today.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
while you're sitting there,
two business owners, doing great in life,
and two people like that have decided to to go and do what they needed to do. They're not hurdles. They're really not. What they are is they're opportunities to create new skills, opportunities to look at things differently, and going back to figure out what you love. If you figure out what you love, you won't work at it. It'll just happen.
Yeah, exactly.
We have our oldest son. He has his professional golf cart.
Yeah.
So he's a pro player. He's down in Tucson today playing for the U.S., trying to get into the U.S. Open.
Good for him.
With 4 other guys, and he's down there playing. And we talked about figure out what you love to do. And so what he does is he teaches golf. He just resigned as the head coach for Chandler Gilbert men's golf men's team. Yeah. He just because his he's taken off with his career in teaching, and then he also plays. He says, "Dad, I've never worked a day in my life. I absolutely love it."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, that's all I want."
I was gonna say
that's all I want.
That's all you could ask for your child.
Why do you think every person on the weekend watches sports? It's because they're watching people that do what they love. Yeah, they have moments. We all do. But they think we can't have that. I'm like, whether you're an accountant or the quarterback for a team, I'm like, you can love that. Like, I wouldn't love accounting, but my accountant loves what they do, and I'm glad they love it because it helps me out.
Yeah,
put people around you that love what they do.
Yeah,
I mean that's if you create a team, that's what you're looking for.
Recipe for success.
Yeah, it's an ultimate way to go through life, and that's what we're here to do, is love thy enemy. Because, like I was telling Mike when I was a kid, I had this tendency to size up people. Like, who's this person stepping in my playground? And like, instead of becoming friends with them, I'm like sizing them up. And
sounds like you're from New York.
Yeah, exactly. Natural guard, though. But
then I learned, like, why am I sizing this person up? I'm like, I should make them my friend, because I'm sizing up because they have an attribute that I don't have and I would like to have.
It's different. It's something other than I am.
Yeah, and I could see if I had that skill, I'd be better off. But now I got to take them down to get rid of that skill from them. I'm like, no. I'm like, make them your friend. All of a sudden, you got all these friends around you, and it's like, whichever way you turn, everything is floating. I have a skill, and this is my skill, but in order to perform the skill, I need these other skillful people.
Yeah. You guys remember, you heard the story from about Henry Ford got sued?
What?
Henry Ford got sued back in his prime, and I think they sued him for, I don't know, something to do with his personality of, like, he thought he knew everything. It was something stupid. You have to look it up.
I'd be in court every day.
But he was on the stand, and they were talking to him, and they were trying to get him to be like prove himself wrong, and they said, "Well, what do you know, like, accounting? Tell me, you think you're so good about?" He's like, "Okay." They asked him about accounting. They asked about different things, and he stopped and he goes, "Okay, just wait a minute." He goes, "If you guys want to talk about cars and the assembly line, I'll talk all day long with you because I'm the best at this." But he says, "I have a button on my desk that I can push a button, and I can talk to my accountant in 30 seconds. I can get the answer for you." He goes, "It's the people I hang out with." He goes, "I don't know everything.
No.
I just know I put people around me that do."
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great story.
That's why we have 8 billion people on the planet to do other things. But so many people, like my dad worked at a Amoco refinery for Standard Oil for 40 years, close to 40 years. My father-in-law did the same thing, working for an electrical company. At the end, they did not like what they did at all. At all. but they thought that's how it is.
Yeah.
And so we grew up as like, you're not supposed to like work. You're just supposed to get the paycheck.
Yeah.
If they say they're going to pay you, then you go to work and you don't even think about what the job was.
Yeah, that's it.
And
That's exactly what we were
I
taught.
love how things are changing.
That's grim. I remember my dad telling me to get a job that has a great pension. And I'm like 17 years old. I'm thinking, all I could see is a 65-year-old guy with a Speedo on, with gray hair on his chest, walking down Miami Beach. I'm like, Dad, I can't think of that right now. I'm 17.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about a pension. I'm thinking about something I like to do.
Well, I remember growing up hearing about these pensions and working your way up. Then I get into the workforce and that shit doesn't exist.
It's gone.
Sorry, that's too expensive. Now we need you to stay in your lane. You know, you get outside of that lane. You know, I was told you work your way up. No, nowadays we need to keep people in as many $40,000 to $55,000 jobs a year, and rather than having one person work the way up the company, we turn and burn, and we bring in someone new, and it keeps the profits up.
Well, I like what you say about staying in your lane.
That's what I was taught.
That's what they're taught, right?
Yeah, I used to get in trouble all the time for that.
I just heard this this week. So it's an analogy, but it makes so much sense. It's kind of like a farmer that has to take hay out to the cows every day, and so they get the tractor started and they put the hay in the you know how much I'm in farming
Silo,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Is it silo?
You grab it and put it in you go in to get the silo. You grab it and then you take the tractor out to feed the cows. And this farmer does it for decades. He does it for a couple decades, and it's every single day the cows have to eat. So the tractor goes the same place every day. So after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it creates ruts in the road. So now the farmer can get into the rut. He doesn't even have to steer it. Yeah, it just goes. It just absolutely just goes like that. And that's how so many people are in life. And when they try to get out of that rut, it's a little work. But all you have to do is grab the steering wheel and turn it like a quarter of a degree, and within a couple 100 feet, you're out of the rut. And then if you go a half a mile down and you stop and look, that other route is a whole new path.
You know what's funny? You say that story. That's like an old parable story, right?
Example.
But today it's like in the news story, like they're saying the same thing, but a neurologist is talking about the neural pathways in your brain. They're ruts.
What he just described was neuroplasticity.
Was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so like what happens is the reason people get into addictive habits is because if you're firing the same thoughts, all of a sudden when energy comes in, it's very difficult to have it transfer into a different route. So like that's like we talked earlier about jumping into cold water. Well, the body's like, no, and then you do it. Well, we're here. All of a sudden, you start to almost turn out of that rut. Now you're off into a plane where there are no ruts. Now you have choices. You keep doing it every day. You start you start changing the neuroplasticity. That's why at first it's a little bit of muscle to do that. But once
it feels a little, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but once you do it and you continue to do it, you'll actually love being in the unknown.
Well, those listening at home, you've all done this. When you're trying to do something new, there's this voice that's like, you don't need to do that. It'll start justifying stuff. Come on, just do this. Yeah, we all have that. That's the rut.
That's how I am always yelling at myself.
We can get out of that, but what it takes is just pushing through that, and then it becomes more and more normal to not do that. And so that rut feeling goes away, that, whatever voice in your head's no longer, hey, this doesn't actually suck that bad. In fact, you found some success with this.
Actually, because when you don't create the rut anymore, it's no longer have to use too much energy to get out of something. You actually just got it, but you're present. So when you're present, you won't continue to create the rut like the story the farmer did.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, because people think, well, I have to keep doing this. I'm like, no, just get out one rut, and then everything else will be easy, trust me.
Yeah.
And then it's exciting to drive the tractor.
Oh, yeah.
Because before you're not driving the tractor, it's driving itself.
We can use the word freedom then.
Yeah, exactly.
That is
Free to go wherever you want.
That is what freedom is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all looking for.
Exactly.
We think it's money. We think it's that. It's freedom.
No.
Yeah.
Freedom, yeah.
So, Jeff, tell us where our listeners can find some more information from you. Like, do we have a website? Do you have any social media handles? What's the best way for listeners to get in contact with you?
Sure. So we have a website called healthyoncesandforall.com.
Okay.
You can go to that. We also have Healthy Once and For All. We have a kind of a homepage on Facebook. And then you can go to my Facebook page, which is Jeff Lobeck, L-O-B as in boy, E-C-K. And you can also go to my wife, Stephanie, same last name, Lobeck.
All right, perfect.
Perfect.
All right.
And then you offer what different, whether that's one-on-one coaching,
Yeah,
team
we got the
reaching
2
out.
courses. Yep. And just look at it. We make it as simple as possible, because if it's not simple, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what Steph and I worked with for like 10 plus years. We worked on ourselves to the point where she could catch on to stuff faster than I could, and I'm like, we need to simplify it. So we started taking it, and I kept using the analogy like, we need to take it down to a 3rd grade level.
Yeah.
We got down to 3rd grade level, and then all of a sudden, now I got it, and then I can teach it.
Yeah.
And then working with people, they love it because it's so simple. I'm like, and it's so simple that they're like, this is it?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, this is it. But
Yeah.
it's use the word consistency.
Yeah.
And you do it consistently, and all of a sudden you've got miracles happening.
Yeah. And anyone out there, listen, like, he's right, because if something's complicated, it's not right. Well, one of the scientists we most revere in this world is Einstein. Mm-hmm. And if you look at his equations compared to any other equation, E equals MC squared. It can't be more simple than that, but it explains the universe and its relativity.
Yeah, right.
So,
Well, we've been taught everything that's great or large or worth living is like very complex, detailed. It takes you long to get there. You got to graduate from it. You need to be handed a diploma to earn it.
Yeah.
When there's nobody. We don't need to wait for anybody to hand us it and say you're free.
That's why I believe we're all in a long ass episode of Punked.
That's exactly what's going on.
Exactly
what's going on.
I knew it should have been easier.
Really long.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping everybody can jump out of that episode sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anyone out there that needs guidance, whatever, Jeff Lobeck is your guy. So
Reach out.
Reach out.
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us today. This was it's truly a pleasure. Seriously.
Yeah. And thanks for the gifts, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I look
Appreciate
forward maybe to have another coffee with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Looking forward to it.
Cool.
All right.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right.